Hello, and welcome back to the BFA Baby podcast. I'm your host, Taylor Hartman, and today is a really fun episode. So, one of my most viewed episodes from season 1 was about teaching dance and stepping into choreography. And at that time, I was taking a class in school about choreography, and now that was like Choreography 1, and now I'm in Choreography 2. And I feel like I've grown a whole bunch with my choreography skills, and it's a talent, a practice that you hone. You get better by doing. And I wanted today to talk about how to find your choreographic voice as someone who is starting to kind of find an avenue for herself. And then also I want to tell you about one of my favorite choreographic inspirations, someone who I really look up to and really admire their work. So for reference, again, if you haven't listened to that first episode, way back from season 1, I choreograph at the studio I teach at. I choreograph for kids, teens, adults. I also have submitted choreography for musicals. I made a dance film. I put student choreography into adjudication for the, yawning on the pod. Oh my god, it's way too early for that. I've submitted choreography on my peers, all kinds of fun things. I've really dipped my toe into choreography since coming to college, and one of the things that we really have been talking about in Choreography 2, the choreography class that I'm just about to wrap up, the one that I made my dance film for, Caesar on a TV screen, on this YouTube channel. When you're listening to this, it will have been out, so go watch it. I also made a whole podcast episode that's like the behind the scenes of making it. Really fun stuff. But yeah, so, Choreography 1 was just kind of figuring out different ways of creating choreography, like what we can do to kind of conjure up some new ideas. Choreography 2 is a really big focus on finding your choreographic voice, and something I learned about finding your choreographic voice is that it's a journey, and it's not, like most things, it's not linear. But finding your choreographic voice is learning how to speak. I tried to put this into words in preparation for this podcast, and I was like, it's learning how to speak a language that you already know. You know what I mean? Like, your choreographic voice is inside of you. It's a part of you. It's just about figuring out what it takes. Oh no, we are yawning so big on the pod. It's just about figuring out what it takes to bring it out of you, to make it, work, to make it visible in the space of a dance. Make it read to an audience, read to your dancers, make it, I don't want to say palatable, because art doesn't need to be palatable, but that's a whole other thing. Make your just make it make sense to the audience. Be able to speak in that voice to where the audience gets it. They get the point of it. And I'll go for a little tangent real quick. Your art does not need to be palatable to all audiences. It doesn't. Let's talk about that. Your art does not need to be palatable to all art audiences, and that's something that I'm very rapidly learning as I make art, as I take part in the creation of other people's art. Like, your art does not need to be palatable for a wide audience. You can make art that is general audience pleasing, but you don't have to. And don't be afraid to delve into interesting ideas in fear that it's not enjoyed by. I should not film these right after I wake up. I just keep yawning. Don't be scared to make art that pleases you in fear that it won't please a wider audience, because the audience for your art that will love and appreciate and cherish and treasure your art will find it eventually. It will get there. And I just want to say that your art doesn't need to be palatable. So when you are digging up that choreographic voice in you, don't be scared. Don't be like, what if they don't like it? Okay, someone does, Yeah, so on your choreographic voice, I really want to make the point that your choreographic voice is consistently and rapidly evolving. It evolves with you, but there will always, if in my experience, there is always a through line. Like for me, I find a lot of my choreography leans very theatrical as well. There's always a narrative. If I'm going to choreograph something, there's a narrative, there's a character, there's a story. That's just kind of how I like to choreograph. And once I kind of realized, like, okay, this is something that works for me, this is something I enjoy doing, this makes art that I am proud of, like, using this makes art that I'm proud of. And it just, it helps you kind of find a jumping off point, but, you know, like, that's always, that's kind of my, like, quote-unquote, ooh, I moved that camera. That's a fine angle. I'll move it up a little bit. Whoa, okay. You know, you can always find that through line, and it will evolve and it will change, you know. It also kind of changes per genre, and genre is fake. It is something I'm kind of leaning into. One of my really good friends, Hallie, is, like, really big on, like, genre is fake, and honestly, I'm kind of getting there with her. But it does kind of shift and change and adapt with what you're doing, you know, like, choreographing for my dance film, you know, I still had that story, I still had the theatrical moments, you know, where she's, like, lip-syncing with it was, like, one of my favorite moments in the whole film. But, you know, finding your choreographic voice, it will adapt and it will change based on what you're doing, based on what you've learned, what you've seen, what art you've really loved. But it's always going to be inherently yours, and there will always be a through line that's, like, that's Taylor choreography, that's insert your name choreography. And my biggest tip for finding your choreographic voice is just to make a shit ton of work. And when I say work, I don't mean, like, make a masterpiece. Just, like, so in our choreography 2 class, we have to do an improv every single day. Any length, any style, any music, no music, any vibe, just dance and film it every single day. And we were just looking at it, and by the end of the semester, we will have done 100 straight days of, like, improvisation. And it's, like, documented on this portfolio, and it's, like, a whole thing, and 100 straight days of improv. And the biggest thing with the 100 straight days of improv is that it's really allowed me to have zero stakes in exploring. There's a week where I just do, like, all hip-hop. And if you know me, I don't do hip-hop. That's not who I am. I sure as hell don't choreograph hip-hop. You know, if I'm in a hip-hop class, I'll do it, but, like, I'm not going to be like, hi, I'm Taylor and I'm a hip-hop choreographer. Like, what? No. And there was, like, a whole week where I was like, let me just feel how this feels. And I kind of took a step out, and I did all hip-hop improv, like, jazzy, funky hip-hop improv for a week. And you can usually find me coming back to that kind of, like, moody, internal story contemporary. And so just know when I say work, I don't mean, like, masterpiece work. I'm not saying start making, like, 7, 8, 9, 10-minute concert pieces to find your choreographic voice. You can find your choreographic voice in 30-second improvs every single day. 10-second improvs every single day. There's one or two where I just get dressed. I just get dressed and I explore how that feels, how that can look. Like, everything that you do helps you find your choreographic voice. Everything that you watch, everything that you feel inspired by, everything that touches you, it helps you find that choreographic voice, which leads me to another point that our professor makes, which is there is no precious making. Yes, put your heart, I know I've talked about this before with Kill Your Darlings, but put your heart into it, love the piece, put some feeling into it, but, like, it's not your masterpiece, you know what I mean? Like, not everything you do is your, like, magnum opus. Not everything that you do is your best work ever. You're gonna make so much more work. Ask her again tomorrow will always have a special piece in my heart, whether I bring it back in the fall for adjudication or, whether I, rework it or restage it or whatever. no matter what I do with it, the version that I put up in the spring, that version will always exist as its own entity. That version will always exist as something really, really close to my heart. And I just really wanted to shout that out, that you can have a heart and a love for what you make, obviously, but, you know, don't take anything too seriously. It's all digging. You know, finding your choreographic voice is very much like paleontology, which is nothing. I was trying to put this out, like, when you're digging for dinosaur bones, when you're digging for your choreographic voice, you gotta move a lot of shit, a lot of dirt, a lot of whatever out of the way to get to what you want, you know? So just, if you're shoveling, you're not thinking, you're just trying to get to the prize. You shoveling dirt is you consistently improvising, you consistently making work, you're finding what feels good or what doesn't feel good in your body, what touches your heart, what touches your soul, what kind of makes your eyes light up when you do it, or like when the idea comes out, you know. And along the way, you'll find your inspirations, you'll find crumbs of a choreographic voice, and eventually you'll find the first fossil, which is maybe your choreographic voice right now, and then maybe more education, and 5 years down the line you'll be like, oh, I should dig a little bit more, and you'll find another layer to it. And I want to reiterate that your choreographic voice is a living, breathing part of you. It's an extension of yourself. It's always changing and evolving and adapting. And it's really important that we know that, because it is always changing and evolving and adapting. And I think sometimes, especially with young choreographers, and I find this within myself, oh my God, do I find this within myself, that a lot of times we're like, oh, this is my voice, this is what I do theatrical, contemporary, and it's like, that's all I do. But I've made it a really big point, especially with these like 100 daily improvs, I've made it a point to really branch out and, you know, talk about some new things and explore new things and new avenues. And there was like a jazz week that I was just like being moody and had like some moody jazz all the time, you know, like it was kind of a whole big thing. And just explore, because finding your choreographic voice doesn't mean that you're stuck in an avenue for your whole life. Again, your choreographic voice lives within you. It adapts, it evolves, it changes, and it's always a discovery. Like you never know, like when you're gonna see a piece of art somewhere and you're like, oh my God, yeah, that's it. And then that adds to your choreographic voice, that adds to your arsenal of work that you can then bring into your own dances. Another thing that I found that really helped me find my choreographic voice was delving into other forms of art. So, you know, I mentioned a lot on season 1 that I wrote a book. I've written a book, I've written some plays, I love movies, I'd love to write a movie, I made a movie, I do like, sometimes if I'm bored, I'll do like little sketch, I'll do a little draw. I'm not much of an artist, please don't give me that credit, I am not much of an artist, but, you know, like little sketches or drawings, like delving into other forms of art, other avenues for your creativity, journaling even. Finding other avenues for your creativity is really important in the sense that it's giving you another vehicle to speak through. And then baking. I love baking and like decorating cakes. It's great. But yeah, so where was I going with that? Oh yeah. So finding other creative outlooks, avenues, whatever, you know, gives you another vehicle to speak through creatively. And you might find something about yourself that like you didn't realize translates into your choreography, but like it does, and you're like, okay, this is who I am as a creative. And like I think a really good example of this is my book. I'm really big on like imagery and feeling, and it's when I write anything, whether it's a play or a movie or a novel or just like a little blurb story here and there, you're always gonna know the like vibe of the, like, I want you to feel like you're a fly on the wall in the book, in the movie script. And I've realized that as I've choreographed, as I've written, all of my creative works that have sort of a narrative have that, like, fly on the wall energy. And it's something I've really, really liked. You know, I want to make it immersive. Not in the, I mean, not in the way that, like, a meow wolf, I think it's meow wolf, like that, like, Omega Mart. Not in the way that, like, that's immersive art, because that is immersive art. Sidebar, I really want to go see that. I think that there's one in Vegas, and I want to go to it so bad. One of those, like, weird, like, immersive art. You know what I'm talking about? Let me, hold on. We're taking a detour in the podcast. Hold on. I think it's called Meow Wolf, and they make these, like, immersive art things. Yes, okay. Oh, there's not, wait, there isn't one in Vegas? I thought there was. Wait. Texas, Colorado, Santa Fe. Oh, there is. Okay, Omega Mart is in Vegas. That's what I thought. Okay. Explore the most exceptional grocery store and more. Meow Wolf's second permanent exhibition, the unpredictably mind-scrambling perspective shift of Omega Mart. And it's this, like, it is this, like, immersive art experience in Vegas, and it's a get lost in and beyond the aisles of whimsical products as this irresistible story of a family store turned supermarket unfurls into mega impactful art. Every door or box of cereal at Omega Mart is a potential entryway into new worlds and artful revelations, while breathtaking installations from local and international artists offer enchanting spaces to wander. It's a must-see immersive art experience for all ages. Watch out for exceptional customers, difficult spills, and not-so-secret bars. The Los Angeles Times said, Meow Wolf's most ambitious, risk-taking, and suddenly brazenly topical endeavor yet, the grocery store-inspired Omega Mart. An interactive, this is the Las Vegas Review-Journal, an interactive installation that is equal parts funhouse, choose-your-own-adventure story, and social commentary on American consumerism. So yeah, I want to go to this in Vegas. So not immersive art is where, like, I'm going to get people on stage. I mean, I see that happening for myself, but maybe not right now. But when you step into this grocery store, you're in this grocery store. You know what I mean? But, you know, when you sit down in the theater to watch one of my pieces, I want you to be like, oh, I'm in the house. I'm in the room. I'm, you know, in the story with you. I'm really big on that, whether you're reading something I wrote or watching something I choreographed. And also, I found that your choreographic voice can also be a form of catharsis. I talked about catharsis so much with Ask Her Again Tomorrow because it was a really cathartic situation. And as I'm setting up, I'm kind of wanting to stage this, like, student work in the fall. It's like a whole thing. I'm really stuck on the idea of it all happening in one bedroom. And I kind of started asking myself, why has all of your most recent work been taking place in houses? You know, and it kind of forced me to reckon with how I feel about my parents moving, how I feel about the sale of my childhood home, how I feel about the like desire I've had for 20 years to not be a resident of Missouri, to move to a city somewhere, to, like, go find my people. Like, and, like, why home is so important to me in my apartment, like, why my apartment feels like me, you know. And that's really heady and psychological, and I'm no shrink, but, you know, it is kind of a thought, like, why do I want my work currently to be set in houses? If you don't remember, Ask Her Again Tomorrow is set in a kitchen, and, like, kind of in a house, but we only see the kitchen, and it's really interesting and important because it's like I didn't really even consider it until I was looking at the work I want to create and the work I have created, and I was like, why does it take place inside a house? Maybe it's this, and it's kind of forced me to reckon with these feelings that I didn't really know that I had. And it's been really fun, that kind of discovery. And yeah, I'm still really big on my house train. I'm still very big on, like, stuff happening in homes. Yeah, I'm really big on stuff happening in homes. And with that, don't be afraid to make big work either. Do your little improvs to find your voice, but also don't be afraid to take big risks. Make a dance film. Stage a full-length show. That's what I'm going to be working on this summer. Like, don't be afraid to take big risks with your art, because that's what college is all about. And that's what being a dance major is all about. You're finding your voice, you're finding your avenue in this industry, you're finding who you are as a creative, and it's all coming together to work in your favor. Everything that you do, every tedious assignment, it's all coming together to work in your favor. And I just want you to remember that when, you'll look back on work that you've made and been like, oh, I hate that. Or you'll look back on work that you've made and been like, oh my god, I love that. And I just want you to remember, like, if you make something and you love it in that moment, but 6 months, 1 year down the line, you're like, oh, I was kind of really shitty. Don't put it down. Don't put its purpose down in your journey, because at the time, that was your choreographic voice. And throughout time, you've just dug up a little more dirt and gotten a little deeper. So every single thing that you make, whether you like it in the moment or you like it 10 years down the line, or you don't like it in the moment but you end up liking it, or you love it and then you hate it, whatever journey that every single piece you make takes on, it's little tiny bullet points of where you were at, little tiny magnifying glasses into where you were creatively at the time. And I think that that's really, really beautiful. And, I had a piece I talked about in season 1 when Caroline came on the podcast. I had a piece called Not Ask Her Again Tomorrow. I had a piece called In Advance of the Florist Payments. And, looking back on it, I'm really proud of it, and I think it deserves some tweaking, and I think that, the story could be stronger. But, like, in the moment, I really loved that piece. And, I mean, there is still a little tiny bit of me that's, like, that piece in its original form, I did really love that piece. And it was kind of, you could see little tiny things that I do blossoming into that, and you can kind of draw a through line of, like, a vibe here connecting to, like, bigger things I've done. And it's really fascinating and awesome to kind of see that progression in what I've been doing and what I've been loving and what I've been working on. It's really, really fun to, like, see, like, oh, this little, like, turn to the ground that I choreographed for Florist Payments is also, like, kind of been molded and adapted to Ask Her Again. And it's kind of all these really big things, and it's been a lot of fun. And yeah, I think one other thing before we move into a slight, like, little inspiration biography section is something that comes from one of my acting professors. She says you have to watch stuff to learn stuff. And it kind of sounds arbitrary, and I think I've probably talked about this before, because it's become, like, a really big thing in my life. You have to watch stuff to learn stuff. Whether it's acting or dance or making a movie, you have to watch dance, theater, movies to learn about the craft. You know what I'm saying? Like, the more dance that you watch, whether it's actual going to see a concert dance, whether it's dance in film, whether it's, I want to make a whole episode about dance and film, but that's a whole other thing. Whether it's dance and film, whether it's going to see a real concert, whether it's, like, watching a taped performance, like, on your TV on, like, what is that, like, Marquee or whatever that streaming service is. Watching dance helps you to learn about dance. Watching acting helps you to learn about acting. Watching movies helps you to learn about, like, cinematography, because you're watching it happen. You watch stuff to learn stuff. And that means something different to everyone. For me, it's technique, and it's story, and it's transitions, and it's formations. And when I'm dancing, like, it's the way I feel. Like, do I feel like a fly on the wall? Like, if I watch work that makes me feel like a fly on the wall. My favorite fly on the wall scene comes from, I'll tell you about one in a minute when I get to our little biography section, but I want to tell you about my favorite fly on the wall scene in a movie, which is in Marriage Story, when they split off with their lawyers, and he's, like, sitting on the floor, and he's like, so who wins? And that really high angle, it's like you're in the room, but they don't know that you're in the room. That's the energy that I like to bring with my dances, and I find that I like that in movies. So then what if how do I feel about it on stage? And then if I see it happen on stage, I could make something like that happen. what about the performance that I watched made me feel that way, and how can I interpret that into what I create? And everything that you watch and learn and ingest and love and feel inspired by, it's all part of that choreographic voice that you have. And just a reminder, like, again, it's not like a linear process. It's not a process that you're going to wake up and be like, this is my choreographic voice for the rest of my life. It's living and breathing and growing with you. And it changes and it loves and it lives. And just check in on her. Check in on it, you know, and it's like, at the end of, you know, if at the end of it all, if you have a huge timeline of all your choreography, and the end is your fully fledged, where you feel the most safe choreographic voice, I almost guarantee that looking back at your very first piece, you could probably still see the seeds of it being planted. So keep working, keep trekking, keep making. Nothing is precious. Nothing is too big or too scary. It's all what you want it to be. And just keep making, and you'll dig it up, and you'll find it, and it will be everything. And I want to close the last half of this episode out by talking about one of my choreographic inspirations, Crystal Pite. So I first heard about Crystal Pite and her work in my Choreographic 1 class. It's called composition, but you know what's going on. My Choreography 1 class, and we did this we did a choreographer research project. And I believe my friend Jaden did Crystal Pite for her choreographer. And, you know, we had to show a little bit of their work and talk about their history and everything. And I was just like, so in love with what we saw. So we watched, with Jaden's piece, we watched an excerpt of when the Royal Ballet Theatre put on The Statement. And I'll get back to that in a minute, but I thought I'd give you a really quick biography in case you haven't heard about Crystal Pite. So Crystal Pite is a Canadian-born and raised concert dance choreographer. She does mainly work in Canada, where she owns and operates her own dance company, Kid Pivot. But she has also choreographed internationally, setting works for the Royal Ballet and the Paris Opera Ballet, just to name a few. Her work span a hybrid of dance and theater, utilizing acting, mime, and spoken word to help tell the stories along with the movement. And not only is she just a choreographer, but she is also a professional dancer. She danced with Ballet British Columbia, which you might know as Ballet BC, as well as Ballet Frankfurt. And so she has this really illustrious career on both sides of the stage, and her work does have that like theatrical angle, and I think that's why I was so drawn to it, because it is dancing and it is acting and it's like all of it. And we do love, I love Crystal Pite's work, so I wrote a little ditty about like why I like it so much, so I could like word it properly, so I'm just gonna read off my phone. Her work bridges theater and dance and expands on themes such as addiction, trauma, loss, and grief. She uses absurdist theater such as mime work in her piece Ben Tropenheit, which, you know, a lot of people, if you think Crystal Pite, you think Ben Tropenheit. To show the complex feelings and thoughts that the main character is facing. We recently watched Crystal Pite's Dark Matter for my Choreography 2 class, and in that puppetry is used. There's like puppets, and you know, the people controlling the puppets are their own character, and the puppet is its own character, and there's a lot of layers with that one, and that one kind of really breaks the fourth wall. There's like the people in like the black morph suits to hide, you know, with the puppetry, and it's really interesting because then at one point all the lights come on. Like, I'm talking house lights, stage lights, like it's like you just walked into a theater and the show hadn't even started, and the performers are like mopping the stage. Like, you just witnessed this really theatrical, like Pinocchio type, like moody lighting situation. Like, you watched a show happen, and then all the lights come up, and these like guys, like completely black morph suits, start sweeping the stage. And it's a really interesting visual because, you know, they start sweeping, and you realize that this fourth wall break is part of the show, and they're all kind of becoming their own characters, and it's really interesting to see how the audience reacts to, like, you know, what traditionally looks like a performance and what is part of a performance but doesn't traditionally look like one. That reaction was really interesting to watch and interesting to find within myself. The Statement, which is the piece that Jaden saw, and one of my favorite, that's what I mentioned earlier with the fly on the wall. The Statement is my favorite fly on the wall thing. So The Statement follows they all work at this like corporation, and it follows two employees from downstairs and like the head HR guy and his assistant from upstairs. And, you know, there's this like undisclosed like HR, PR debacle that happens in the office, you know, a scandal of some sort. And this guy from HR comes down to like the office where the scandal happened, and he's like, I need a statement from you guys. And, you know, they're talking about, are we on the record? Are we off the record? You know, what are we thinking? How are we going to fix this? How are we going to cover this up? And it's really fascinating because they're all in suits or like button downs and pants, you know, they're in like workwear, and it's all spoken. So if you were to take like a scene from a movie and just extract the audio, like that conversational, you know, just people talking, that's the scoring. You can find the entire performance of the statement on YouTube. It's like 20 some odd minutes long. It's very, very amazing. I love the statement. So it's basically just like a recorded conversation in that like everyone like is a character like speaking, but they're not like the audio is talking, but they're just dancing over it. It's really fascinating. And anyways, it tells the story of like this HR guy, and is he corrupt because he's like helping to cover, you know, this scandal up, and he's telling them what to say, but should they say? And like one of the employees feels really conflicted, like I can't keep lying. She like has this mouthing moment where she's like, I can't keep doing this, and it's like, it's so good. It's so good. Love the statement. And yeah, so I said the statement, the entire piece is set to a conversation, and it feels like you're dancing alongside a film audio, which is really interesting. The use of spoken word in the statement really inspired me and encouraged me to consider different means of scoring my own dances. There's an entire section where, of those improvs I made for class, that I'm dancing to like podcast clips. Like I pick a podcast episode and I click the like scrub bar somewhere in the middle, and I'm just dancing to podcast episodes to kind of get that energy of like dancing as different parts of the like a conversation. And I've really enjoyed doing that. So using spoken word, like seeing the statement, I would have never considered bridging acting and dancing in that way. But now that I've seen the statement, it's kind of opened my eyes up to being like, oh, that's something that I could do. Let me play around with that. You know what I mean? So yeah, everything that you watch stuff to learn stuff. I would have never gained that insight or learned that was even like a thing that was even worth playing around with. Like I didn't even sort of have that idea. And when you watch things, you know, your creative eyes are opened a little further, and you can kind of see potentially a new avenue or just a new way to express your dancing. I said that my biggest love for Pite comes from the fact that her work breathes life into things we are too scared to talk about. Again, Ben Tropenheit deals with addiction and loss and trauma and grief, and you really see that. And, you know, Dark Matter leans into like, you know, those intrusive thoughts that we might not really want to talk about. And the statement is like, what do we do when we get ourselves in trouble? What do we do when the people around us get themselves in trouble? Do we help? Do we hurt? Do we lie? And Seasons is kind of like change and how change makes us feel. And, you know, it forces us to look within ourselves and our own experiences, which is something that I want my pieces to do as well. You know, the theatrics and dance, you know, kind of lend itself to obviously being on a stage. And, you know, the more that we sit in that theater with a Crystal Pite piece, for example, playing, we quickly realize that this isn't just like, I'm going to sit down and enjoy a show and be entertained, and it's going to be this palatable experience. We quickly realize that this is a piece of art that you cannot passively watch. It's a piece of art that makes you think, makes you feel, makes you dream, make you worry. You know, I think that art that you can passively watch is important and critical, and, you know, you can do it, and you should. There should be art that you just watch to enjoy. But when I create something, most of the time, I want it to say something. And even when it is in a more palatable form, like Caesar, my dance film, Caesar on a TV screen, looking at it from the outside, it's just a fun little dance, and, you know, Anna plays dress up in a suit. You know, it's a fun little dance that's palatable for most people to watch. And it's palatable for people to watch and people to enjoy. And, you know, the biggest thing there is like, yeah, but if you look into it a little bit more, there's a story, there's a point, there's a narrative, there's a commentary in there. And with Ask Her Again Tomorrow is absolutely not a dance to passively watch. We're hitting the floor, we're yelling at the audience, we're running and jumping and screaming. Like, we're not really screaming. There was a point where we were screaming, and honestly, I want to bring the screaming back, but it just didn't really work. Whatever. When I rework it, I think I want to bring the screaming back. But yeah, you know, it morphs and it bends and it lives and it breathes. And art that you can watch passively isn't good or isn't bad. It just is art that you can watch passively, and that's not the avenue that I want my art to be in right now. Even if it is like, oh, you can watch it passively, it was not created to be watched passively. You know, there's a layer there that if you want to dig for, you can find. But you don't have to, you know, but there are pieces where if you want to enjoy it, you are going to have to sit there and think and get sticky and uncomfortable and slimy and gross. And like Ask Her Again is a really piece that I was like, I want people shifting in their seat. I want them not to know what to do. I want it to be like, you can't take your eyes off of it. And I want to be like, I'm thinking about that dinner piece. I'm still thinking about that dinner piece. And it's all kind of, you know, I found this angle of my choreographic voice through watching Crystal Pite's work and how it made me feel and why I enjoy that and why I think audiences do love her work. And all that to say is your choreographic voice is always morphing, always changing, living, breathing, growing. And what you watch, you learn from. What you watch, you learn from. And, you know, you're consistently learning and growing, and your choreographic voice is learning and growing with you. Make work. Don't take anything too seriously. Take risks. Make art that sucks. Make a show that fails. You know, you're going to learn something about yourself in all aspects of what you do. And I just really, really, really wanted to make this episode. While it is short and sweet, I really wanted to make this episode about finding that choreographic voice and finding that energy, because it is something that when you come into college and you're asked to choreograph, maybe for the very first time, or like you get a dance teacher job and you're choreographing for the very first time, you know, it might feel scary and different, and you might not know quite how to think or feel about it or how to go about it. And learning and growing and giving yourself grace to make mistakes and fail and make choreography that sucks, because you can't make good choreography if you don't already make choreography that sucks. And that's something I'm learning, something I'm growing with, you know, giving myself grace for what I'm working on. And yeah, with that, I just wish you all your best creative endeavors with your choreography and any other really creative creative, what was I looking for? Creative output, but yes, creative field, genre's fake. Remember, the genre is fake also. Whatever creative avenue you choose to take, I wish you all the best success in finding your creative voice. It will come with time, it will come with work. It's always shifting and learning and growing. Remember to watch stuff to learn stuff, and thank you for watching this episode. If you want to follow the journey, you can follow the podcast on Instagram at BFA Baby Podcast, and you can follow me at Tata's Ballet, periods between words. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode. Mwah.